I'm really annoyed with myself because I played a session earlier where I just had all of the computer beeps playing, and so the audio just was not as good as I wanted. And so to make it up, I'm just gonna play a pretty grindy, hopefully longer session where I just four table and I kind of explain. And because I am going to be multi-tabling, my analysis is not going to be as crisp as it's always going to be. It's always going to be, very slightly rushed, but I feel like in general my fast decisions are going to be in the ballpark in the single race pots, and I'll probably be playing a little bit worse in multi-way pots. I've found that because multi-way pots are generally a little bit more sophisticated, there's more branching scenarios that it's easier to kind of make mistakes. But hopefully this will just be a nice, productive, easy session. I was kind of annoyed because in the last session that I posted, I ended up, setting up pretty big stacks. And so wanted to kind of demonstrate what it looked like to just, not have a god run, but just to play very solid and just show you that playing very solid just really accomplishes the job. On table 2, a bunch of different sizings I can use. I'm going to overbet the turn in order to check back the river, and this kind of freezes him. If he's got any kind of draws, he's still going to really want to call, if he's got the nut flush draw and stuff. And then it also just lets me check back the river. You can probably also bet just 2/3, 3/4. You can kind of do whatever you want. Essentially, I just want to be able to threaten my opponent with the possibility of putting in a huge bet on a future street. Yeah, I'll just give it to this guy. Start with a check call on the flop. Gonna have to play pretty conservatively on table 4 after starting with a check call on this flop. My opponent definitely can have a lot more aces, but I'm gonna at least call twice and probably give up on a ton of rivers. That's a pretty good river for me, but my opponent's still gonna be able to beat me with a bunch of ace jacks and ace queens that he floated, or not floated, but he flatted pre-flop. Floated, flatted. It's gonna be a tongue twister. Okay, so I started at noon, so I'll probably try to play for an hour and a half. This board seems bad for me, so I'm gonna start with a check. That's a good turn. Don't need to bet very large. I think one of the kind of nice things about playing, a bunch of tables is that it's not first thought, best thought, but it kind of makes you not be very fancy. One, you just kind of have the inability to be fancy. I'm just gonna fold here. I have no idea what's going on table 4, but I can't really do anything with the guy behind. And a bunch of players are getting into a war, and I have queen high. Easy decisions. But yeah, but four tabling cuts down for better or for worse on, the quote-unquote sophisticated plays. Which is probably, for the better when your overall goal is to just focus on playing solid and just putting the money in when your opponent's strong and you're stronger, and then getting out of the way when you have kind of mediocre hands and your opponent really wants to play large pots with you. That's pretty much defines how you play poker at the smaller stakes against kind of ABC opponents. Definitely want to go for a value bet now when the hearts come in, and I have the unblockers on this board to the hearts. That's a pretty good street to go for a thin value. There's a lot of different ways I can play my hand on table 2. I'm gonna start with a bet and then check, call, turn, and river. Seems pretty reasonable. And now my hand has got to be the best here. So. Oof. Let's see. I just called pre, and I think that was the action, right? That's a pretty thin call there. Kind of make a mental note of that. I like my flop call. Definitely have a ton of equities. I mean, obviously against that hand if he's going to be betting that lightly on the flop. I like min betting here. Definitely get some value. No need to really slow play on the 4 there. Just want to kind of raise when there's a backdoor draw and just try to get him to, I don't know, level off. I also can beat all of the lower 4s that limped. Just flat. Folding ace jack to the early, the middle position opener. Should be pretty standard. Guy bets very large on the flop, but I mean, top pair good cooker has to start with a call. And, you know, gonna evaluate. If this guy just goes like 7 on the turn, I'm just gonna vomit. Oh, he makes my life much easier on the turn, so I'll start with a call. It's a pretty good river. Should slow him down a little bit. I have no idea what he bets so large on the flop with and gives up by the river like that. Obviously that I'm ahead. So maybe he had some like big draw. This turn should bring in a bunch of like pair plus draw that now can't fold, and I can pretty much I can fold to a turn check raise very easily there, right? So just gonna play my hand straightforwardly for value and not really worry too much about my opponent trying to check raise me off the best hand. If I was playing against a stronger opponent, I can consider having a check there. This is a pretty good flop for the out of position player. I'm gonna start with a check and try to bluff catch for 1 street. Seems like a reasonable plan to me. And obviously, you know, I have outs to get there. Cool. I don't think people bluff in this spot very often. This guy makes it huge. Or not really that huge, but a reasonable size. So many draws there. Sorry, there's a ton of dogs suddenly going nuts outside of my house. Social distancing. Okay. This is probably a really, really terrible card for me, so I'm going to start with a check. He should have a, bajillion suited hands here, so if this was like an offsuit hand, like if it's like a 7, just like a random 9, I'd probably continue to fire with this 5 and the ace kicker. Okay, so this guy's got like jacks, or like pocket 9s or something. I'm just going to show our hand down. You limped. How do you not have an ace here? Bastard. Bastardo. I don't even know what language I was trying to attempt. Italian? Spanish? Something romantic because it ends with an O? Something I definitely notice very consistently is that these guys use very large preflop raise sizings, and it's just not that good. Because, like, one, when a guy sizes up really huge, that's what she said, I'm usually not going to be putting in the money incorrectly, right? Just not going to be making too many mistakes, because I can just pretty much just look at my hand and say, okay, this is a strong hand, I want to play a large pot or not. And so generally, when a guy also makes it like a large sizing pre, that is going to often induce me to only 3-bet or fold instead of like flatting a lot. And so when I'm not flatting a lot, it's going to kind of put you into a really gross spot when you raise 4 or 5 big blinds pre and then just, you know, snap fold on the flop. I guess I have to take a shot here. Try to get him off a jack. I mean, I'm just going to run into an ace a bunch of times that he just that he played super, super passively. That's fine. I can get him off an 8. I should be able to get him off some other like pocket pairs lower than an ace. Obviously a good spot on table 1. Hopefully I get action from someone. Hopefully I get raised. Okay. Makes my life kind of easy. I like his $23 flop raise. Does not make it obvious that he is committed. I wonder how many bluffs he has there when he goes to 28 on that board. Particularly when that board is so dry, right? He just never really has it. Gonna fold 4s under the gun. Okay, so here, multi-way, when this guy bets half pot, that means there should be a minimum defense shared between 2 players of continuing. I'm sorry, I'm suddenly not having a total brain fart of how to calculate alpha while I'm playing 4 tables. Yeah, screw this guy. But whatever the minimum defense frequency there is, it has to be shared between the 2 remaining players. And the player who's in position or closing the action, is what I'm trying to say, should bear a slightly more frequent defense, which should make sense because when you're closing the action, you can be slightly looser because you don't have to worry about someone behind you who will then snap you off. So if your opponent bets half pot, that's what, 50 over 150, so that means both players have to defend 66% of the time between them. And so essentially you have to kind of like narrow your range to your top, whatever, like 40% of bluff catchers in that spot. And so on ace king X, 3-way, whatever the top 40% of your hands is generally going to be like second pair that has some blocker properties against the relevant top pair, and then it's going to be like ace-X type hands. And so I don't really need to dig much deeper. And generally 3-ways on ace-high boards, I think people are going to be fairly straightforward, and so I even don't need to show up with second pair that often. Just going to squeeze and try to just put it in against this guy. He made it so big pre. I mean, with 10 big blinds behind pre, I'm just so incentivized to just take the pot down. And this is what we were just talking about when people make it huge. Like, if he folds this here, like, it's it's like a pretty big disaster. Good flop for me, obviously. I make a sloppy size bet here because I was running out of time. I mean, this guy might have 7s or 5s, I guess, and then just wreck my life, but whatever. How did this... I'm so confused on how this didn't go in pre. Good job, guys. That was hilarious. Oh, the traps. I was so happy with 9s too. I was like, oh, this crushingly good board. And then the guy leads? Oh, man. All of my dreams came true. And then it was Fire Island all over again. Just gonna protect my vulnerable hand there. Still get a little bit of value. It's hard for him to have a made hand. Or, you know, have a hand better than mine at that point. So I'm betting there for value, intending to check call the turn. Or check call the river, I'm sorry. God, that hand was hilarious. I'm like, oh, 9's 3 away, so good. Yeah, this is probably good looking at how many shorter stacks are at the table, right? If everyone is super solid here, folding ace 10 is, you know, whatever. It's probably a little on the tight end, but, you know, when all these guys are going to continue, then this is really, really fantastic. Because, like, even when I flop this hand, I check, it's going to check through 4 ways a lot. And so I'm going to actually be able to realize at least 1 turn of equity, right? So there we go. I'm still going to continue to check this hand because I only really want to go for 1 street or play my hand as a bluff catcher. Should be harder for these two remaining guys to have 2 pair here. So if I get to the river somehow, my hand is definitely going to be good. And I probably can call 2 streets against this guy. Okay, cool. Want to bet there. I don't know what the hell this guy's trying to represent here, but if these guys were full, I'd call. But I was going to overbet if he checked to me, but when he leads, makes my decision easy and saves me money. So, thank you. It's a pretty light defense. Don't think I'm going to get this guy off ace high. Might still have the best hand here. Wow, he just checked that hand? That seems really random. No idea what strategy these guys are playing sometimes. There's a couple shorties here. Hopefully play pots with a $17 stack. No such luck. Button limper. Now do I turn my hand into a bluff is the question? Yeah, let's check and see what happens. I think I've given my opponent wide enough of a range. Okay, well, I think I've given my opponent a wide enough of range that sometimes he shows up with like some kind of lower hands, but because this is small blind versus middle position, I'm just going to give this guy credit. And obviously when you check and your opponent has the option of betting or not, then his hand's going to be, you know, a little bit stronger than usual. So... yeah, I wonder if shoving is good there. I have to think about that hand. Have to think about that hand in Pile Solver. 3 should be a pretty bad card, so I can start with a check. This guy pots it. When he sizes up, I'm just going to size up on my own, because I think he's going to be imbalanced, and so he's usually going to be on slightly higher end of his range. Don't have queens, please. Easy game. Start with a small bet. Yeah, I'm just making a really tight fold there. I think it's fine. Oh, I think I accidentally folded closing the action on table 4, so that was a small mistake. If he's got a 10, I'm gonna go broke. Small blind versus under the gun here. He should not have too many 10s here. Like, yeah, I mean, he'll have Jack 10. I mean, I just have to go all in here. I mean, if he's got a 10, again, good job for him. He didn't snap, so he doesn't have a 10. Also, it doesn't really make sense to raise a 10. Why would you raise a 10 there? Just call. I think I just bet really small on the turn and induced, and maybe he convinced himself that I have a folding range there. I don't know what's going on. All I know is I'm not folding kings, right? And also with, like, I guess with, like, so little money behind. So, how do I phrase this? When you're trying to think about whether you should trap or whether you should just put the money in, basically you should say, how likely is my opponent going to continue to barrel on future streets? And that's a spot where, with so little money behind, I mean, I guess if your opponent's just, like, really, really bad, they're going to go for a whatever wild tiny bluff on the river there. Like, I've obviously seen people bet, like, you know, 10 big blinds into, like, 400 on the river and then not be good. This guy min-raises me on the flop. I'm gonna call and jam non-scary turns. It's not a good turn for me. That should also slow him down, because I should just have, like, all of these cards as well. Yeah, I'm just gonna give this guy credit. I mean, a bunch of also hands got there as well, so good job him if he bluffed me. I think it looks like I should improve on so many turns that I'm kind of skeptical that he's going to be bluffing me there a lot. So, make a little tight fold. Whatever. Diamond on the river. Now the question is, does Jack 10 have the heart to triple me? Okay, he's got 8s. What do I think about a check raise here? Might be too fancy. I probably should have just bet here myself. That's a horrible river. Yeah, just gonna put it in here with this not much money behind. I mean, I guess when I check call out of position, my hand should look like a draw there. And because it should look like a draw there a lot, that I think that he's not going to want to bluff when the draw comes in. Because, like, my hand doesn't look like queens there, right? Just gonna go for 3 streets with ace 9. hard for him to have a queen, hard for him to have pocket tens. So my hand's got to be the best there. Just go for 3 medium streets. Well, I went for like small, medium, medium. I think was kind of the sizings that I'd want there. I think this is where the profit lies in small stakes. Is not just obviously having a discerning talent advantage over your opponents, but it's also that should have been a raise against that weaker small blind. See, this is the kind of, you know, small edge loss that you begin to experience because you can't like pay attention to all of the pre-flop dynamics nearly as clearly. But when you are able to, like, you know, beat 25 no limit for, I don't know, let's say $12 an hour, and you can beat 50 no limit for $13 an hour, well, now you can play both of them, and assuming that you are not, you know, being a huge fish when you're playing both combined, now you're in a really profitable situation. Because now you can, you know, essentially double the 5? This, like, never makes sense, but it's, like, never a bluff, right? Like, this is a classic spot where you can't really think of that many combinations of hands that make sense for your opponent, but when you show down, they always have that combination, right? You're like, wow, this guy only has pocket 5s, and then every time you continue in the hand, he's going to show you pocket 5s, so I don't really have to count combinations when my opponent just always has the hand that he's representing. I mean, that's going to be a spot where he has, like, Jack 5 or something, you know, ridiculous. Yeah, but anyways, once you can beat these, you know, combined stakes and 4-table fairly comfortably, right? That's where the money is, at the smaller stakes, right? As Phil Ivey says. Playing online is where you kind of like grind your fundamentals, and being able to like 4-table this and make just like fast decisions is probably going to be really good. I'm gonna go for shenanigans. But once you can just like grind these comfortably, have like a, you know, $30 to $40 win rate, then when you move over to like 1-2 or 2-5 live, assuming that there is not a worldwide pandemic ravaging your city, well, then you're going to sit down at these tables with a sense of huge empowerment because you've played, you know, thousands and thousands of hands. I'm going to give up to a double barrel here. I should just have so many Broadway hands that are just better here to continue with. But you're going to sit down with just so much confidence because you're going to have just so much experience, and you're going to be playing at just so much of a higher level than your opponents. So despite being able to have, I guess I just ship here. Eights, bastard. Despite not having the you know, the higher hourly you might have playing 2-5 live, or I think it's, you know, pretty comfortable to make like $40 an hour, maybe higher, 40, 50. I mean, I definitely think that you can make $40 or $50 an hour if you're very, very good at like 4-tabling these games. But if you are genuinely that good at 4-tabling these games, you probably should be playing higher, right? So that's like the one argument. That, like, man, if you totally just annihilate these games, probably should move up a little bit. I think this combination should... What? He pots it on the river? That doesn't make any sense to me. I call him. This combination unblocks a lot of his hands. So I can check raise or value. And then I should have bet the turn and then check raise, and then check called the river, if that was kind of my plan. but now I've chickened out. But definitely want to wait until I have like bottom pair with like the unblocker backdoors there, so it gives my opponent the maximum chance to have some kind of hand that is going to be worse, right? Gonna go broke this hand. I think the best line to play this hand is going to be like bet flop, check call turn, check call river. It's probably reasonable. Or just muscle a dude. Or just muscle a dude. Five X pre, love it, love it. You love to see when like the 250 stack, the 250 big blind stack is, you know, making obviously erroneous bet sizings. This is probably close. Everyone here is full stacked. You know, like if both of the blinds are bad, you can make an argument for flatting here, expecting to see like a multi-way pot. But just gonna play this on like the thinnest part of my kind of like deny equity value raise. See if I can get any. If he raises me here, I'm just gonna throw my hand away super fast. Okay, cool. You have queens. You has queens, sir. On table three, I'm sorry, my plan is to check, call, flop, turn, evaluate, usually fold on the river. If he sizes up to like 650 here, I might just hero fold the turn. Let's see what he does. $5. Okay, that's a reasonable size that I can call. He can still be value betting eights. Call. That's a horrible river. That should also slow him down. There we go. Yeah, I probably had like pocket nines there. I definitely like starting with a flop check. Induce a bunch of bets because you look like you're giving up. On the turn, if it looks like I check call the flop lightly, I'm going to have to give up on the jack turn because I should not have too many jack floats. He's going to keep calling. And then on the river, you know, depending on what he thinks my range is. If he thinks I was like check calling with all low cards, probably has to give up the river. And so, I mean, that's kind of the implied threat of board coverage is that I can show up with all of the hands here. Okay, so the middle guy leads in this monkey. The monkey in the middle leads. Then the guy calls in position. Threes obviously has no value. Don't live re-raise. God, if he makes it like $10 here, I just like throw my hands in the air and vomit. I guess he can have pocket twos and pocket fours in his like limp calling range. Shouldn't have pocket nines too much. I should have all of these hands. So definitely think my hand is ahead here. Turn is terrible for me, or you know, terrible in that he should have a lot more like suited hands in his limp calling range, and then calling the flop obviously. But can now turn my hand into a bluff catcher. Table 2, probably not horrible. Cold 4 bet. It's close. Beautiful card on the river for me, so just gonna value bet. Fortunately, he did not have a 9. Probably just had like, you know, king jack or something on the flop. That was a 4x, not a min raise. checks through pretty fast on table 3, so my hand's definitely the strongest here. Just gonna go for 2 medium-sized bets. Hopefully we get like a 3 on the river. You can do a lot of things on table 1. You can bet small, you can bet large. See if I can get a steal through. Yeah, there we go. Oh, love it when they make it so big that I don't have to worry about ever being exploited. Because I can, you know, obviously ace-10 is not going to be anywhere near the proximity of my defense range against that size. Wow, so many limpers. Yeah, I'm still gonna fold this. I'm so nitty. So nitty. Nope. This is pretty close. That's a really bad card. I mean, not only should the 10 improve so many of my opponent's Broadway type hands into like very strong draws, but my range should also include a lot of like Broadways, 9x type hands, so, you know. I just have a lot better hands that offend now, right? Like 6s just get demoted in my overall range. I'm pretty surprised he did not try to bluff me off hand. I mean, he might have just had like ace king or ace queen or something on the river that actually could have won a showdown against a blank. But again, man, he made it a pretty fat pre. All right, on the flop, right? He didn't need to make it such a big sizing. We've seen that multiple times now, right? Like, it seems to be like one of the leaks that is giving me the most money. Is that my opponents are just betting so big, and I'm betting so small. And the small bets really get it done, so I don't need to bet that huge. He shouldn't have that many 3s. He should have like a lot of... I should have overbet this turn. The most obvious overbet in the world that I just missed. He shouldn't have that many 3s pre-flop, and so I think he has just got a lot of like random floats. And then when the 2 bricks out all of the backdoors, then I think that, you know, I should be able to. I mean, now like 4-5 got there and stuff like that, and 6-7, or not that he can really have 6-7. But I'm not going to run a bluff here. Wow, it just calls me with naked ace. So I was right in my read that I thought he had just had a non-6 type or a non-3 type hand. Soul read me. Man. I think that's the confusing thing for a lot of beginning players. They're like, oh, I knew exactly what hand he had, and then I executed the play perfectly against said hand, and then I died. And that's like kind of one of those examples where, in the long run, I still think my play is probably fine, and that I can generally get the guy off ace high. That's definitely something I think I get better and better at the more I play poker, is that I don't really adjust my strategy, my macro strategy that much when I'm going through downswings. I think when you're new and you're like losing and you're not really 100% sure if what you're doing is great in the first place, then you're constantly like searching around for what is possibly the best strategy. Like you're just always like kind of like grasping at straws. This is such a good board for me that I'm just gonna like deep hole 50% here. You're always just like digging a lot of shallow holes, right? And you never really have like a really deep hole. But the more experience you have, the more you just have like a really deep kind of like macro understanding. And when you have that, then you don't really need to deviate from your plan that often. If I get raised on the river, I can actually find a fold. I think this is a sizing that puts him into like a really gross spot with a lot of his like two pair or like, I guess, top pair type hands with like one diamond. He's just like, such a small sizing, right? Concentrating on picking a sizing that really puts my opponent into like a really gross spot rather than focusing on what is exactly the sizing that it's reflective of the strength of my hand. Which is why you see me trying to often make the smallest bet possible. Not only does it save me a little bit of money when I get caught with my hand in the cookie jar, but it also forces my opponent to play a lot of pots, especially out of position, especially on 3-bet pots with his very kind of like medium strength hands, and that's where a lot of my money is going to come from. Flopping a little something everywhere like this. This guy starts the deep hole. Obviously going to call turn. And going to evaluate the river. It's a good river. I'm going to fold this hand. I'm trying to think about what the minimum hand I would probably call with. I guess it's like an 8x is probably the best hand that I'd call with here. Or the worst hand that I'd call with. I just have so many ace X's by the river that I can bluff catch with all of them. I also like raise the river with ace X quite often. See, when the guy's sizing is all in, makes my life pretty easy. This guy 5 decks it pre. Yo, if you want to make it huge, we'll play big pots. We will play the big pots. I mean, I should just flat here a lot, but like it seems that this guy's just gonna go nuts. Like if my opponent's like telegraphing his hand so much, I don't need to like trap with aces to slow play. Although, you know, like I would say against a regular opponent, I probably flat there with aces 85% of the time, 90% of the time. If he triples me, I'm kind of put into a gross spot there, I have to be honest. But I have king queen. Oh, I'm sorry, I block king queen, right? That's like the most likely hand that he's going to try to triple me with, so probably gonna have to try to call down there. I should on table 2. It doesn't look like I should have much of a flop check raising range here, but occasionally should, you know, put in just a little bit of a trap. I don't know if that guy ever folds an ace-x. And I don't know if that, and also I don't know if he's gonna fire multiple barrels against me should I play passively. Whatever. Fine, have it, guys. Everyone wants to bet huge. You all can have it. Screw you. Okay, you win too. You wanted it more than I did, so I will let you have it. This guy let out into 2 people, so I just think it's very likely that he has a very strong hand here. I'm gonna check this hand when it's a 9. I like that. If it's like a lower card, I'd probably bet. The 9 brings in whatever, like a lot of 2 pairs and jack 10s and etc. So if it's lower, I'd just go ahead and straight value bet, and then obviously when I get there on the river, easiest value bet. This is a 3 bet a tiny percent of the time. There's a couple hands, particularly like the medium suited aces and suited kings, and very often they're like a little bit quote unquote too good to 3 bet. That is, you never want to get into a spot where you get 4 bet with those hands because they just have so much post flop value in a single raise pot. So a lot of hands are going to be mixes pre-flop, but when you're defending the big blind, some of those kind of suited aces and kings are 100% flats. It's usually around like ace 7 and ace 6, I think. Again, kind of evaluating the table before I'm considering if I'm opening ace 10 or queen jack offsuit. Those hands are about the same strength. I get like super min 3 bet here. I'm actually just gonna fold this hand. Ah, excuse me, I need some water. Yikes. I have the space heater next to me and it is just like blasting like very dry air against my face all the time. Gotta think I have the best hand on table 1 now. Ten two is probably fine opening against weaker players. Well, I guess I'm gonna get coolered here. Okay, or not. Again, another spot where he bet too big on the flop. He could have bet smaller. If he was gonna snap fold, right? Definitely continuing with any pair after I bet that small and then he raises me so small. And I should have a ton of ace-x and, you know, have more ace-x than him. It's reasonable for him to like check raise flop with like ace 3 and then kind of like slow down here. It's also reasonable for me to have like ace 5 and then, you know, bet the flop, check back, etc., etc. Ace King 8 is so good for me as the pre-flop raiser. I don't think I can do anything but bet. I mean 2-5 theoretically should probably be a call, but I'm just gonna fold. You can kind of see all the spots where I hesitate. I'm just like, oh, I really want to go after this guy. Kind of a small thing to note is that at 15 no limit, you can complete in the small blind a tiny bit more loosely because you're given slightly better pre-flop odds because it's just half a big blind. This guy pots it, so I can just fold. Check multi-way on this board. I have it open a straight draw, right? Alright, pots the turn? Okay, you win. You win, my friend. Now that okay. I was gonna say, now that the board pairs, I really want to check back here and just try to realize my equity, but yeah, when he shoves, I just have to fold. Gonna mix it up with a check on table 4. On the river, it was a chop, so no real point in value betting myself, so I'm really just hoping that he's got air and it's just gonna take a shot again. You could probably put in a small bet for value here. That's probably fine. Okay. I really wasn't sure what I was going to get called with that was worse, but I have to feel like my hand is good there, and I guess I get always called by, like, lower pairs. So I just pick a small sizing that seems like it could get called. Obviously really, really bad against opponents who are, like, paying attention to you and can just blammo you. Blammo being a extraordinarily scientific term. Oh, come on. Such a good card for him on the turn. I also block all the draws, so it should just put him much more squarely on a made hand. And if he's got made hands, then he should have top pairs and trips there, right? So just went for large size, large size. I'm gonna bet here and then follow through on the river. If I miss, I think I should be able to get it through these guys. Respect. Shenanigans. There we go. I really like betting small on the turn, because then that gets him to just kind of reveal the strength of his hand. Hard for him to have a king, and, you know, if I can say, oh, I have kings by the river and you don't, then when the river trips, then my overbet looks, at least to an ABC opponent, it should look fairly realistic. Again, you're seeing me fold a lot of hands pre-flop that I normally would be defending to 3-bets should my opponents be making it a more reasonable size, but when I make it 150, everyone's making it like 525 or something hysterical, so I don't really need to worry about defending those kind of weaker hands like King Jack suited or 6-5 suited versus the small blind 3-bet when I'm on the button, etc., etc. Bastard. Don't really have much to say about that hand. Played it for value, I guess. I probably missed some value. Probably should have bet a little bit bigger. I guess there's like some small percentage of the time that he's got a boat, but I probably could have shoved there. Or made it bigger on the turn. So, mistakes on my part. Mistakes were made. Again, kind of the problem with not being able to play like optimal in every decision. I'm just like, oh yeah, if I thought about that a little bit more. I mean, that's not really an excuse because that's a pretty obvious spot to recognize that, oh, I have the nut straight versus my opponent's in second straight. There's like some percentage of the time that I turn jacks into bluff here. I think it's not horrible. Because after you bet 1/3 of the flop, I mean, and you have a jack, your hand doesn't have that much value, so you're essentially trying to get your opponent on a king. And so I think if my opponent in X or Y spot has enough like king X's here that I can try to blast him off that hand. But in this spot, against the early position initial raiser, yeah, he probably just has a bunch of aces. I waited too long, otherwise I would normally barrel that spot. Who knows if the whatever leveling applies in that spot. Don't need to bet very large to get him off of an ace, right? This is what I'm trying to target with this line. Okay, sixes, good job. He should just not have very many hands that can call me by the river. He should just be very, like, float heavy. Wow, that's huge on the flop. Okay, okay. I believe. I'm such a believer. I also have really good blockers to the Queen X type hand, so it's a pretty good hand to bet, despite the risk of getting check raised. Although, you know, if your opponent is always check raising his Queen X hands there, then he's just very, very susceptible to getting value bet when you triple off, right? Let's isolate this weaker opponent, even with a weaker hand. This guy, I should have more 2Xs than this guy. So, I mean, this could probably be a fine overbet spot as well. But, you know, when the board pairs, picking kind of a normal sizing to avoid getting dumpster on when he has trips is very reasonable. Great spot for threes. This guy should not have many 4s and 2s here, either in his opening or continuing range against a 3-bet. I raise pre, get called in 2 spots. Very dry board. I'm going to check here. I mean, I think my hand is the best, particularly against the Slimper, but I'm only going to get 2 streets of value here, so I'm going to try to get those streets on the turn of the river and have a slightly more balanced, like, turn range. It's kind of sloppy with that sizing there. Bet really small because, you know, what can my opponent really have there? Hopefully this time the sound is a lot better. I'm sorry that I'm such a, like, audio engineer scrub. You'd think that being in this industry for however many years, I could play a little bit, or I could have a little bit better production value, but alas, it's not to be the case. As you can see, not doing anything fancy. I mean, one of the things that is kind of the underlying secret is that I'm making very solid folds on all of these kind of like earlier streets. And so because I'm making so many very solid folds, it keeps me out of trouble. And so a lot of times in your own games, it's more difficult to recreate this style where you are generally staying out of trouble and putting in the hands with the nuts. Not going to try to run a bluff here. Still not going to try to run a bluff on ace high. Okay, ace 10. I have completely lost my previous train of thought. Something about playing a solid style and putting the money in good. Yeah, shouldn't be too hard, especially in these games where people are, you know, turning their hands so face up in so many situations. Like there, we're like ace queen. Raise pre-flop, completely whiffed 3 ways. Check folded even against a small bet. When you do things like that, you're going to stay out of trouble very often. I mean, flopping straights is pretty good too. Does we have the same hand? No, we do not. I overbet the turn and he called, which makes it a little scarier when the diamonds come in, so it's going to be kind of gross if he suddenly ships the river, but I have to think I have the best hand. Please don't shove. I didn't even think about that fold on the river. I think he's got a. I mean, if I say right before the hand, oh please don't shove, he's got backdoor diamonds, then obviously gonna snap fold when he ships, and he's gonna look at that hand and see that I folded a straight, and then vomit in his diapers. Yeah, we're gonna take one shot there and give up. I guess on table 4. Oh, I didn't see that this guy had no stack, so now I have to call off with ace jack like an idiot. Like an idiot. Hold. Special? Yay. What did I say? Special? Be best? Small blind is not good. I'm sorry. He's recreational. Small blind is having a good time. This board is really good for me, so I'm going to bet a little bit bigger. Not really looking at my hand, just going to start with a kind of range play. You have Jack 10. Or sometimes Ace Queen, which should not be raising there, because, you know, when I put in the money against Ace Queen, it's pretty screwed. Definitely have value now. Not gonna worry about it. I mean, so basically I need a call there if I think that my opponent is somehow imbalanced and he's lopsided toward bluffs, but I really, really doubt that's the case. So just gonna find a nice, easy fold. Guy leads 3 ways on an ace-king flop, so again, you know, when people lead into you on an ace-king flop, the first thing you need to realize is, one, he should not be doing that. And whenever your opponent is doing something that, you know, he really should not be from a theoretical standpoint, that means that you now have permission to deviate. But, you know, games are good. Quarantine games are really, really good. Some of my friends play like Stars PA. I've never played on just Stars, so it's weird for me to say Stars NJ, Stars PA. But one of my friends plays on Stars PA, and he just keeps showing me just like hand after hand where he's at 200 no limit, and it's like 3 limpers in front of him with action to him. I'm like, oh, okay, games are good. I'm gonna bet flop, check through a bunch of turns. Raise river, I think it's a good line. Wait, was this a 3-bet pot? I might have completely screwed this up. Whatever. I don't know what the action was, but now that I look at his bet size, or his stack size, if it was a 3-bet pot, obviously I messed something up. But I think it was a single raise pot. I was just setting some kind of shenanigans trap. AKA it was bad. I think pretty much every time I say, oh, I'm going to go for shenanigans, it means I'm going to take the less EV play, right? Let's just be really honest about that. I'm going to play worse. Okay. That's so gross. That's so gross. I mean, not that he didn't have a ton of equity against me, just, you know, I happened to just block a lot of his outs. But talk about wildly overplaying your hand. Jeez. Jeez Louise. Also, you know, board coverage, right? That's kind of a thing. AKA, I can show up with hands in a ton of spots. Lost infinite value on table 4, but gain infinite value on this table. Boo. That's gross. What the hell happened over here? I have no idea. Pot's huge though, so start with a bet. Oh, if you win 200 big blind stacks, you get the money thing twice, the celebration twice. That's hilarious. This guy leads in. Well, okay, he doesn't have that much money, so I'm not gonna screw around. But this is like a pretty good hand to like raise. Because I block a ton of the hands that he wants to lead with. Games are good. I don't know what else to say. Anytime that you win a pot and you get the double money signs, games are good. I guess when I get raised on the river in that spot, maybe I should just call. It's hard for him. I think it was like, yeah, do I just call there? No. That's me being a nit. I like betting the turn. One, I block a bunch of nines, so my hand's still probably the best here very often. I guess he has a 2. But more importantly, I just want to set the price for showdown. Well, now I'm definitely going to call. Wow, I bet the river. It's kind of unnecessary on his part. Given that there was a full house on the board. Get off me. Suddenly got confused. I was like, wait, is this heads up? Small blind, big blind? How do I not have the correct stack size? I'm like, no, this guy's just min raising me like a chump. Get off me. Cool, let's quadruple up again. The traps. So many traps. Something I think I'm doing decently today is after I set the flop trap and then die horribly, I'm able to find a fold with my hand. Right, so like I had that straight. Well, I guess I didn't slow play when I had the deck Jack 10, but when I got the river and my opponent had the flush, and I blasted, I was still able to find a fold there. So when you're playing passively, you know, kind of important to not always just go bananas. I can probably steal here. with this small 7 of spades there, it's kind of a spot where if I get raised when I have the straight, it's just such a gross spot. So just wanted to check back, preserve a little equity. This 6 is pretty bad because now it's really hard to get him off just like a ton of different types of hands. So that's a pretty good river. This guy leads so much into me on the turn. Like it's like 6-8 got there, but I block 8s. But you know, again, not going to continue with this hand. I probably should have bet on table 1 because this board is just so good for me, and this guy is short. But yeah, just gonna set whatever trap. Wow, he just pots it on the flop. Cool. Yeah, whatever. I call. I have no idea what happened. No idea what happened there. Bet the flop, turn went check check. I led the river and he... I'm basically, again, this is kind of a range, the board coverage kind of problem where he just thinks I don't have coverage in that spot and I do. So that seems to kind of be a reoccurring theme, is that through playing in a balanced manner, punishing my opponents who are, you know, making assumptions about my range that are obviously untrue. Okay. The guy led into me on a king high board, which is a no-no, so we took a shot at him. And he won. He shot faster. That's what she said. There's a limp and I raise Bree. Okay, so I have the best hand. So I'm going to start with a small bet and then try to induce from there, I guess. Let's see what happens. Okay, so pretty productive session. Made some pretty big folds, which hopefully will not be embarrassing when I look at the results tomorrow. I don't know, I think I played for like an hour and a half. I don't know, made 100, maybe a little more than a hundo. Hard to tell. But, it's always very reassuring that, you know, you can play 25 and 50 no limit, just play very, very solid and, you know, have a comfortable middle class kind of income, which is, you know, essentially what I'm mostly trying to prove. Everyone knows playing GTO at the higher stakes is great, but you still see so many coaches who are just like, GTO approaches at lower stakes are horrible. And so, yeah, I would like to see a single one of them be able to just even for table 25 and 50 no limit to beat it for $40 an hour or whatever, right? I think those guys who are playing saying, oh, I just only play exploitative at these kind of limits, they simply just don't have as high as a win rate. And so if your win rate is not higher, then there's nothing you can say that will ever let me think that your style is better, right? Obviously, I mix in kind of exploitative elements. You see me saying, oh, I'm going to, you know, play a little bit tighter than as I should in theory in X and Y spot. There's a river call. Especially against that size. Woo! But for the most part, you know, the very small bet sizes on the flop and then having the very kind of like balanced range on future streets is obviously giving my opponents fits because they're just like, you know, shoving me and spazzing on me in spots where they're just thinking I never have it. And then I'm just like, you know, turning my hand very face up in my opinion, right? Playing my hands very, very straightforwardly for value. So hopefully this makes up for the horrible audio and going from now on, I'll be able to figure it out. So good luck everywise. I'm going to stop this recording and then I will see you tomorrow for another 4 table and grind.